My name's Pat Mosele, and I'm interviewing Chris Jones and Marc Siskin from Carnegie Mellon University. Would you two please introduce yourselves and just say a few words about what you do?
Marc, go ahead.
Okay. As Pat said, Marc Siskin. I am the manager of the Modern Language Resource Center here at Carnegie Mellon, and I'm also the technician for all the language online courses. My responsibilities include making sure that the content is put into the courses correctly, troubleshooting any problems, and making sure that all the people using the courses as instructors are aware of any updates that we make.
Okay, that sounds good. What about you, Chris?
I am Chris Jones, a teaching professor of French and computer-assisted language learning here at Carnegie Mellon, and I was the initial designer of the sort of flagship online course, French Online, and have participated in the creation of the other courses as well in varying levels of involvement. Yes, everything from creating content to supervising video shoots and working with Marc on technical issues that come up and so forth. So.
That sounds great. So could you just then tell us a little bit about the first online language courses that you have developed and how they came about and what kind of learning levels you targeted maybe and why?
I think probably I'll just speak briefly, and this is before Marc came to work at Carnegie Mellon. We initially created 4 semesters of French and 4 semesters of Spanish with a Mellon grant starting in 1998. And those courses were created with the intention of responding to scheduling problems in basic language courses, and were conceived immediately as hybrid courses, in other words, to diminish classroom meeting times and allow for students who were not available because of labs, studios, and so forth, to do those kind of meeting times. And we set a single classroom meeting in the evening and instituted the similar structure that we continue to use now with student assistants, peer assistants for individual meeting, and lots of online activities. Now those were sort of first generation courses built on HTML, JavaScript enhancements, and hot potatoes exercises. So they did not have the data capacities and many of the design improvements that we did with sort of version 2.0. 2.0 is not quite accurate since it's really not Web 2.0 that we're talking about, but the new versions that you're familiar with now.
Okay. And so, Marc, how did you come to get involved in the project?
Well, back in 2005, Chris was looking for someone who could assist in both managing the center here and also providing support for the programs that were being done. And fortunately, Chris and I have known each other for many years through Calico, the Computer Assisted Language Instruction Consortium. And he reached out to me and said, would you be interested? And I said, of course. So I was hired on to manage the center, and with my other skills, I just stepped into the role of the technical coordinator for the update from the original version of French Online to the version that was the precursor of what we're doing in OLI with the early versions of the OLI software.
Okay. So how's the project funded? It's kind of complicated, isn't it?
Well, we've spent a lot of grant funding in the creation of these courses, and now there was funding originally funding of this Mellon funding, which got us going. And then there was funding through the Open Learning Initiative, which is Hewlett Foundation, and then Lumina and Gates and so forth, a bunch of different foundations. And then there was an NSF grant to Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh to found a Science of Learning Center, which both and I was able to arrange for some additional funding for French and then some funding for a Chinese course through that initiative. And this was really to use the courses as research environments for various sorts of research, including the people from psychology and human-computer interaction and so forth. So that's the primary funding for the creation of courses was thus grants. Now there's ongoing funding, and we may talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of how the courses were rebuilt and redesigned from the ground up, that came with the Open Learning Initiative collaboration. It meant we were exposed to people who were talking about learning theory, especially online learning design, instructional design, the sort of iterative development, a whole bunch of concepts which were not terribly common necessarily in the language learning area, but which have since sort of merged with our field as well. So when we started looking at redoing the French course, we looked at the old one and said, I don't think we can use this. So we really pretty much started from scratch. Myself and Sophie Cunier, who is now at Columbia, she was my colleague at the time. And we really rethought the design really from the ground up. And that's when we decided to use the video as the basis, really as the basis for the entire course. And then started scripting video and then built
the course
everything from grammar to pronunciation to communicative aspects of the course around the video itself.
Now, I think that's a very innovative approach to take. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say open learning initiative? What's open about these French courses, for example?
Well, the open part, this was a condition of funding in this larger initiative, which includes all sorts of other courses, including biology and psychology and physics and so forth. So that one of the conditions of funding was that there would be a version of the course open to students who are independent learners on the open internet, in other words. So they would have access to these materials without payment. Also, of course, without instructor guidance. Unfortunately, there's a kind of corollary B to this condition. And that we would then also have a version which we would use in a structured way with classes of enrolled students. So the open part, and anybody can use these courses, as you know, but the open part, and this is involved, we don't really know how many students, but upwards of 100,000 students, let's say, in the open and free environment. Have used it to a greater or lesser degree. There's certainly, no doubt, some of the issues that people find in the MOOC environment where you have free access, and there's intended to be some guidance. Even so, you may only have 5% who come close to finishing the course. We've gotten lots of feedback from people who have used the courses extensively, but what percentage?
Hard to know.
No way of knowing without really doing a lot of data mining that we haven't been motivated to do on that side of things anyway.
You've been more motivated to do data mining for the fee-based course where that's used in universities mainly?
Yes, to the extent that there you have mostly students who finish the entire course.
Oh, okay, I see.
So there's a much more meaningful collection of data. Now, that data mining is still much to be done, needless to say, but at least we're getting started in that direction.
It's great to have the data, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for both of you, I'm kind of wondering what have been some of the big challenges that you faced in, mounting the courses and in, carrying them out in their continuation?
Marc, you might want to address some of the technical challenges and sort of the evolution of the environment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Since I started with the French course, there have been approximately 3 generations of improvements to the OLI software, all of which have required some refactoring of the code that we provide so that we can take advantage of these improvements. Some of the changes can be relatively simple, done with a parser and just put the data through. Others require a complete rethinking of the page because things that we did to work around limitations of the old software break under the new software. Another issue that we have is as robust as the delivery mechanism as far as design and the technical service of it, as an authoring platform, it has a fairly steep learning curve. So a lot of what we've done, hiring student workers to help do the actual coding, is taking what has worked in the past and saying, here's the template, follow the template, and repeat it. So, yeah, it works. We have a new worker this summer, and she's going great guns, adding to our Spanish courses. But in previous years, it has taken weeks, if not months, to get the workers comfortable enough with this non-intuitive, non-WYSIWYG authoring system so that they are productive workers.
Did you want to add anything, Chris?
Sure. In other words, we're like all software-based projects, we're subject to market forces and market evolution completely beyond our control, as are the technical team from OLI. So, for example, when Apple decides that Flash isn't going to work in the iOS, that has, and our entire course, all the interactions were based on Flash. As a choice, a technical choice made by the Open Learning Initiative project as a whole, well, that's the problem. It's a big problem. And so those conversions are not easy. So we're still in the middle of that, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so that's...
And then that's something which, but that's not going to change in the cyber world as long as it goes. It's incredibly dynamic, and things change, and created things break and have to be redone. That'll be a constant. So we can't really complain about that, but it has to be recognized as an issue.
Marc?
In terms of the content side, the challenges, there were probably, I think I conventionally say there have been 50 people or more involved in French alone, much less Spanish and Chinese and Arabic and so forth. So there's a very large number of people involved. Content creation, of course, some of them, as I mentioned, my co-author Sophie Cugnier, Bonnie Youngs as well. And and then others, Heather Allen, who was at the University of Pittsburgh at the time, and then many graduate students who have done things, including writing tests and exercises. So there's lots of room for variability in terms of quality and thoroughness, and then endless need to proof and upgrade, and that has turned into one of the constants of the project, is that virtually every year we attempt to improve the course in some fashion, greater or lesser. And that is also not likely to change, and that as we go along we realize that certain things about the course are better than others, and we attempt to identify what might be low-hanging fruit or what we can afford to do a little bit more on this year and so forth. So that's another constant along with the technological change.
Mm-hmm. Mark, did you want to add something?
No, the biggest thing that I'm doing is making sure that we find the bugs, squash them, and add the new content. So, yeah.
So it's a constant, ongoing process, right?
Yeah.
And so the materials are updated every year, and now you're taking on additional courses. That is, you've created some additional courses in other than French. And to be specific, you have French 1 and 2. And what are your plans? What's coming down the line here?
Well, there will be 2 semesters of Spanish, 2 semesters of Chinese, and Chinese has actually been taught consistently for several years, but not in a completed OLI format. But it's not far off, and there will be a Chinese one available in the fall of 2014, and a Spanish one available in the fall of 2014. We have a mini course called Arabic for Global Exchange, which is available now, and is not really a full language course. It really has what I would call some survival Arabic, and then a fairly extensive cultural suite of texts divided into everything from the history of Islam to governance issues in the Middle East, and brief discussion of the Arab Spring and so forth. So it's intended to prepare people, professional students, others who are heading to the Middle East and really have no clue. And that corresponds to a lot of us who may not have been exposed to issues or language in the Arab world. So it's intended to fulfill a rather narrow niche, where the others are full kind of college program courses like the French.
Now, are those going to be similar in content, in the sense of design?
The
in the
Chinese
video
course
based?
was developed quite specifically with taking the French as model. Spanish is, is however more of an update of the prior Mellon Grant course.
Okay.
So we didn't have the resources necessary to really go back and completely redo the Spanish course. But it is significant that we still managed to go down to Guadalajara and shoot some video which enhances the course rather than forms the foundation for it. But it is a course which, once again, it's going to be the first iteration of this OLI delivered course, and will undoubtedly improve as the years go by. But it certainly will be viable when it's released.
So, Mark, did you get to go down to Guadalajara too?
I wish I could have, but I had to stay here and actually work. Although I was the editor for the video, so
oh, okay.
I got to see everything.
Well, that's nice. Okay. So I'm just wondering, in terms of moving forward, what are some of the plans you have on, say, in the far future additional courses you might want to create or additional levels of courses you want to create?
Yeah, well, that I have started thinking about this and shared a few ideas with various people about the possibility of creating, um, you can call it an intermediate level French course, or a second year, depending on the context of instruction, but something which would have different characteristics to the extent would be less structured.
Mm-hmm.
At the level of higher ed, we go through most of the grammar within the first year. Not that it's acquired, but it's at least touched upon, so that in a second year, it would be possible to have a much more modular approach to assembling a course for each instructor, so that the modules could be created separately and then assembled according to really instructor preference. And that kind of approach is something that I'm interested in investigating, not on my own, in a collaborative way, in a much more open authoring kind of environment, where there would be a core group of authors, and then others would be invited to contribute with some guidelines that would be, collectively established in terms of what are we looking for, in a cultural unit, what are we looking for in a grammar unit, or in a communicatively oriented sort of discourse-based unit, or a topic and function, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, but continuing to have the same a delivery system which would allow for management by an instructor, allow for some automated assessment as well as some instructor-graded assessment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and then possibly, it's an enormous amount of work, but integrating learning objectives in ways that the data would also be available for these for the new courses. It's knowing the work that went into the last versions. I shudder to think of what it's going to be, but to the extent that we can distribute the load and work in a larger group, it may be possible to do something good without anyone tearing out all their hair.
That's always a good thing, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that sounds also like a very innovative, sort of cutting edge approach, which is interesting because you're combining the innovation of the technology with innovative pedagogical principles as well. So that's I would think very exciting work to be doing.
I think, well, it certainly has kept my interest. Let's put it this way.
Well, that's good.
And it's kept Marc fruitfully engaged for the last.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. All right. And so I'm wondering now then, any thoughts about, in terms of your what you mentioned about doing a sort of modular approach, would you envision these modules as being based on target culture information, on videos again, or a combination of text and video, or what would be your dream module?
Well, I have notions of what a dream module would be, but once again, I am hesitant to get too far out front in this process, because there's a certain number of people that I have spoken to already about this. Others will be coming shortly, and I'm anxious to kind of harvest ideas from an extended group, but certainly to use video. Of course, at the second year level, the notion of interview format becomes a little more viable.
Mm-hmm.
but depending on the area of instruction that we're focusing on, this sort of simulated communicative approach still might be viable, but stuff with a more cultural focus, interview, going, especially expanding the diversity. In other words, for example, North Africa and West Africa as potential sources for material, the Caribbean, and so forth. And different foci, both text, media of all sorts. We may want to integrate authentic media to the extent that permissions are possible. That has been something we've completely avoided up to date by creating all our own media. It gives us enormous flexibility and has some limitations as you move forward and want to include a short story or a newspaper article and beyond, relying on linked materials which can go away rather quickly. So we did confront that issue with the Arabic course. We did a lot of permission seeking and integrated materials written by others, so that we may go that way. But
Though dealing with the permitted media, we also had to take into account the fact that the delivery mechanism may change. So, when we got permission, we also asked for the permission to make our own copies of the material so that we could be the ones distributing it rather than relying on YouTube or other services like that.
Although we may go, the new courses may be YouTube delivery of video, because even OLI is talking about YouTube delivery of video now. So who knows? There's an ongoing. You can put media up on commercial servers and then integrate it into a pedagogical context which adds value much beyond the media itself, and then it may serve multiple times.
That's true. Very valuable.
You repurpose it in another way.
Right. That's true. That's an interesting point too. So, anything you'd like to add about your involvement? From the personal or professional satisfaction point of view. Anything you'd like to say about your involvement in the project overall?
Well, I'll let Marc speak for himself, but for me, the video creation is extremely satisfying, and of course, seeing the final course and getting good feedback from people who are using it is extremely satisfying. In between that sort of beginning point and the end point, there's what I call a lot of hard slog, and
Yes.
that can be nice in small pieces along the way. I mean, in other words, you get satisfaction and then you just put in a lot of work. But I think that's true of most of what we do. Designing a course is a lot of hard slog, and then the students give you good feedback, whether it's online or otherwise. Same thing with writing an article or compiling a book. That's sort of what we do. There's satisfaction at endpoints and at the conception point where it's all ideas and happy thoughts. And you just have to realize that, between conception and realization is a lot of sweat.
And many long hours.
Many long hours. That's okay.
Yeah. Marc, what do you want to say?
Well, I guess there's a lot of satisfaction in that. One of the things that has sort of kept me going is the people I'm dealing with at the Open Learning Initiative are, in many respects, non-humanities people. They are definitely people who have had little instructional interaction with languages. And Chris, especially at the beginning, and I've had recently, the opportunity to show them the difference between teaching a chemistry course where there's discrete facts and you can do that, and a language course where things like definitions have more than one meaning. At one point, when we use the definition format within the Open Learning Initiative, we can only have one word or phrase and one definition. And I had this meeting with the programmers. We were talking about it, and they said, "Hey, why do you need more than one definition?" And I gave them a couple words. Okay, define, run.
Oh.
And they gave me the runner program. And I said, "Okay, you're a runner. What do you do?" "Oh, okay." You can see the light bulb going off. And they, it's interesting going from a humanities-based perspective into this hard sciences-based perspective and exchanging the ideas. I learned a lot from them. I hope they've learned a lot from me. I know they've learned a lot from Chris, because a lot of what we've been doing are things that were requested in the original We Want to Use OLI platform, and the exercise types were ones that were designed because in languages you need the audio. We have the video, so we need the ability to deal with the video in discrete chunks and things like that that weren't quite obvious when you're saying, "Oh, you're going to have a short lecture and then, answer questions."
Right. The more traditional approach. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you both for meeting with me today and for participating in the interview. It's been delightful. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, that's good.
You're good?
Great to talk to you. Glad to be able to shed our tiny little light on this large subject. So.
Yeah, I think viewers are going to be very interested in hearing what you have to say. So thank you both. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.